Once upon a summertime in Fresno, California, it was hot. It was so hot that the street never cooled off. Walking across that asphalt with my little sister Debbie, arguing as usual, I stopped to make a point, stamped my foot, and my Zori melted right into the street. Ugh, it was so gooey. My family moved to California from Scranton, Pennsylvania in the mid-50s. We moved into a new housing development of small ranch-style tract houses. There was no shade. There were swamp coolers in each house. And this was a mat that got water on it. And then there was a fan that blew the air over it. But when it was 100 degrees outside, inside the house, it was like Philly when it's 85 and muggy. Ugh, didn't help. In 1963, when I was 13, the Beach Boys were blasting out of every teenager's radio. You remember Surfing USA? If everybody had a notion across the USA, then everybody'd be surfing like California. All the teenage boys wanted to be surfers. I just wanted to go to the beach. I was so jealous of my Sunday school friends that were rich, they had houses in old fig garden, shade trees, air conditioning, swimming pools in their backyard. That summer, my neighbors rented a house on the beach for 5 days in Morro Bay. And they invited me to join their daughters. It was wonderful. That wet sand oozing between my toes and the breeze against my skin, collecting sand dollars and clamshells. But then I had to come home and it was still hot. I slept Thursday. Friday, I woke up, and Friday was a good day because, well, there was one swimming pool on our block. It was on the far corner where the lot was bigger, and it belonged to the Zander family. And there were 4 kids, including my friend Julie. Mrs. Zander's rule was that each one of her kids could have one friend over per day. Friday was my day. But before I could run out of the house, my mom sent me into the backyard to scoop the poop of my German Shepherd. And there was a giant hole, 20 feet across, but only about 18 inches deep in the middle. The sides sloped down to that middle and they were packed. I scooped the poop quickly, into the ivy. And then I let my dog into the house so she could sleep on my bed. And I ran down the street, opened the gate to the Zander's house, to the backyard. And there was a bonus, Julie's older brother, Mike. Mike was in high school already. He was tan, with blue eyes and shaggy blonde hair. He looked just like Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. He gave me a thumbs up, jumped feet first into the pool, shot straight up into the air, shaking his blonde, shaggy hair. He looked like an Afghan hound. And then he walked over to the side of the pool, swam over to the side of the pool, stretched and pulled himself out, stood in front of me and said, "Hey, Susie Q, what's happening?" So I told him. I told him about the hole. Well, Mike looked at me and said, I know what it is. A rocket ship landed in your backyard. Mike, what are you talking about? A rocket ship? No, listen, dude. I read this book. There are these little green men from Mars, and they travel in flying saucers. One of those saucers landed in your backyard and made that hole. Well, after we swam for a while, Mike wanted to see the hole. So we walked back down the street to my house into the backyard, and he walked around the hole, and then he pointed. Look, dude, footprints from the hole to the gate. Martian footprints. Well, it was Mike. Of course, this must be true. That night for dinner, my sister was at Girl Scout camp and my mom was at a meeting. So it was just Dad and me for dinner. So I told him about Mike's theory of the hole. He looked at me and said, I read that book, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I can understand about the rocket ship, but Susie, why would Martians come to Fresno, California? And why would they land in our backyard? Dad, I figured it out. They must have been traveling down towards Santa Barbara, towards Brandenburg Air Force Base. They had engine trouble with their rocket. And you know how you have all those tools in the garage because you're always fixing cars engines? Well, they landed in our backyard to use your tools. They fixed the rocket and then they took off. Interesting theory. Well, Saturday morning, my mom got me up early to take me shopping, but first we went to get donuts. And then when the stores were open, she bought me new sandals, not Zori's. And then she took me to my favorite new restaurant, McDonald's. Fresno was got one of the first McDonald's franchises. And then instead of taking me home to do my chores, she took me downtown to the kids' matinee. Cartoons, a movie, air conditioning, all for $0.25. Well, by the time I got home that night, I'd forgotten all about the hole. The drapes were drawn so in front of the windows, so I couldn't see out anyway. And Dad and I did what we always did on Saturday night. We watched Perry Mason. Sunday, Mom and I went to get Debbie at Girl Scout camp up in the foothills. And then we went to my grandparents for brunch. Grandpa made his usual pancakes. I think that was the only thing he knew how to make. And then on the way home, we got to our block and Mom dropped Debbie and me off, my sister and me off, at our best friends, the Benson girls. And all Debbie could talk about, of course, was camp. And then we played board games. And finally, Mrs. Benson sent us home. It was around 4:30. It was really hot. And we dragged ourselves the 4 doors down to our house. And we heard a noise in the backyard. And splashing. We opened the gate and there was a doughboy pool, 18 feet across, 4 feet high. And our father stood straight up from the bottom of the pool, shook his bald head and said, it's a machaya, which means it's a pleasure. Girls, go change into your swimsuits before dinner. Come take a swim. Our dad had built a doughboy so that we could swim in our own backyard, just like the rich kids.